is President and CEO of Commonwealth Foundation. His organisation is dedicated to bringing economic freedom and individual liberty to Pennsylvania to ensure better lives for everyone. They've recently seen exciting success in expanding educational choice and limiting the emergency powers of the governor's office in their state. And 2022 certainly promises to be another big year for them. Welcome to the show, Charles.
Thanks so much for having me, Vale.
It's good to be here with you. It's not our first rodeo together having a bit of a yarn, so, it's good to sit down face to face, like you said, a bit of humaning and, have a chat.
Great to be with you in real life, especially. I enjoyed being with you on audio, but this is much better.
Amen. Amen. Now, Charles, what is the Commonwealth Foundation? What do y'all do?
We fight for freedom and human flourishing in the most important swing state in what I would modestly call the most important country in the world, the guarantor of freedom. It's one of the reasons I love Atlas Network, is every time I'm at one of the programs, I'm reminded of what I know deep in my soul, but I think I sometimes forget, which is that the rest of the world really does look to America to safeguard freedom, liberty, and everything that we believe in. Well, guess what? So much of the both theoretical and legal undergirding of that concept in this country was born in Pennsylvania. So I think we have a particularly important job to do.
Amen. I love that. Bit of the history doesn't go astray when it comes to standing for these ideals. And you're right, so many of the international partners I've been privileged to meet as a viewer say that. They're like, I wish we could argue about tax rates. I wish we could argue about education policy because some of the issues they have are just of a different variety, but they look to groups like Commonwealth as the absolute tip of the spear of what can be done in a free and open society to protect these values, to promote them, which I'm sure must be humbling in your position, leading one of these preeminent state think tanks, making sure that we are fighting the good fight.
It is, and it is humbling, too, to be with our international partners because the challenges that they deal with are beyond anything that we can imagine. And that's one of the things I love about Atlas Network is it is a two-way street. Yes, of course, there are things that America or Pennsylvania or hopefully an organization like Commonwealth could teach others, but the inspiration and the learning goes both ways. And I'm always inspired by meeting my colleagues in places like Venezuela or, these days, of course, Ukraine's on everybody's mind. I have challenges in my business. I never have to worry about, because of what I say at a press conference, whether somebody's going to come after my children or me. Mm-hmm. And as you know, that is real for much of the world. And it's very important to me to have that reminder of the urgency of what we do in safeguarding a free society. It is not the default. It feels normal to us, right? It's just the air that we breathe. It's not in the course of human history. And that's why the work that we do together is so important.
I love it. I couldn't put it better myself. And that's why we love Commonwealth, because this is such a beacon of these ideas and seeing them in action. Now, of course, 2021 was a great year for you guys. You kicked a lot of goals, achieved a lot. So talk me through here, Charles. What did you get done?
Sure. Well, I think the most important example I could give you, Vale, goes back to everything we just talked about history and about the role of America and the role of free society. In a free society, no one person, no one man, no one woman should have absolute authority. But we know from the whole COVID situation, the whole reality that we all walked through those years, that there were many cases where there was one man, typically it was man or one woman rule in a lot of places where executives in America, those would be governors, arrogated among them to themselves immense power that they never exercised before. And it was always done on an emergency basis. But for some reason, those emergencies seem to last a lot longer than most of us would typically call an emergency. If my wife calls me and says, can you pick the child up at school? She fell and she's bleeding or whatever. That's an emergency.
You wouldn't say I'll be there in 2 years.
Right. But that's how, as you know, as we've all lived, that's how some of this stuff has stretched out. Well, and I think we can all remember back to the beginning of COVID, right? When everything shut down and it first came out, I think we all gave a lot of deference to, for example, governors or the medical profession or whatever, because none of us knew what was going on. And it seemed we all needed to make a good faith effort to solve it.
Yes.
But for most of us, there came a point where we started to ask the question, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. And isn't this a little bit too much, what we're doing, if no one can go to work and so on? And that moment happened for us in Pennsylvania. And in 2020, you asked about 2021. The background to 2021 obviously is 2020. During that time, we became very actively involved in working with lawmakers in our state to say, okay, we respect the fact that this is a global pandemic. I respect it in my family. My wife still to this day is dealing with long COVID symptoms.
Yeah.
So I take this disease seriously.
Absolutely.
I also take human liberty seriously. And I think you can take both things seriously. And that's what we did. So gradually, we worked with our legislature to unwind some of the most severe restrictions. And unfortunately, our governor fought us tooth and nail. His name is Tom Wolf. He's not as famous as, the Andrew Cuomo's of the world. And I think really the reason for that is we tamed the wolf. We cut back his powers so that he could not any longer exercise that untrammeled authority. And the coup de grace came in 2021 when we were the first, and as far as I know, still to this day, only state to actually change our Constitution so that no one man, no one woman, I don't care if it's Tom Wolf or me, if I ever was that, or you'd be a great governor, by the way, we should talk, right? But no, I don't care who it is. I don't care how much I like you or don't like you. No one should, for an indefinite period, be able to exercise that kind of authority. That's the change that we made, not just rhetorically, not just with a white paper, but in the very governing document, the fabric, the Constitution of our state. And what it required was a ballot question. Mm-hmm. So people all across the state had the opportunity to vote on this fundamental bedrock principle of should one man or should one woman be able to shut your business down or do all these kinds of things that he tried to do for all those years. And the answer in a really overwhelming way was no one should have that kind of power. We made a permanent correction in the balance of power, the checks and balances, all the stuff that I would modestly say we kind of invented in Pennsylvania at the Constitutional Convention.
History's on your side on that one. Yeah, exactly.
We restored those principles. We restored checks and balances and a balance of power through winning that amazing battle in 2021. So that was really the signal achievement for us in 2021 in Pennsylvania.
I mean, no doubt that is huge when it goes to actually changing the Constitution, because for someone like me, a bit of a layman in the context, it speaks to a very conscious future-proofing of the situation, so that these kind of absolutely gobsmacking overreach that so many of us went through, and I know you particularly went through in Pennsylvania as a state, I love that because it's thinking ahead. It's not just a matter of, well, COVID's gotten a bit better now, let's all move on. That was a weird time, wasn't it? I guess the government will never do that again. I kind of, worry that there could always be a return to these level of restrictions since the bell's already been rung. So seeing this,
And that's the point of a constitution, right? And I have some differences with our governor. I voiced them earlier, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's not about him. We have constitutions. This is one of the blessings of a free society because of the fallenness of man, because it doesn't matter who the next governor is or the governor when my kids are grown. There have to be these limits on that power. And I think a lot of us were shocked to discover that the limits were not as strong as we thought they were. And that's why for us in Pennsylvania, it had to be a constitutional change. And thankfully, thanks to the support of Atlas Network and all of our mutual supporters all across the country, we had the wherewithal to actually get that done. It's a very difficult thing to get done. And there are times when you can't do something like that. You have to have an executive order or a statute or whatever. But for all the reasons you said, Val, we thought for future-proofing our state and hopefully setting an example for the country as to what you can do if you make the case to ordinary people. That's what we had to do to win a ballot question. Make the case to ordinary people, regular voters, that this isn't about whether you like this governor or you don't like this governor. This is about what kind of society you do want to live in.
Yeah.
And do you want to have this threat that really everything that you've built can just be squelched because one person thinks so?
No, I hear you. And can I just say how refreshing it is, your position, which is you can care about this very serious illness and care about individual liberty. They're not mutually exclusive. And for me, it's felt sometimes over the last 2 years that not even particularly nuanced position. I'd like to think a pretty human position of caring about both can kind of get lost in the noise of whether it's the, diktat from the CDC, well, that's gospel, or someone saying it's all a hoax and this is all a lie. Somewhere in the middle, I'd like to think there is a place for liberty-minded people to say, I care about people, I care about this disease, and I care about liberty. And I love hearing you kind of carve out that space.
Yeah, and I'll give you one other example of that, Vale. I mean, one of the situations that we discovered in the middle of this, because we do care about people, is that there were people being threatened with homelessness because of our governor's actions. He was one of the few governors, I think there were 3 maybe out of 50, who stopped all construction.
Wow.
Now just think about that for a minute. Construction, generally speaking, is outside. You're building something that doesn't yet exist. So you're outside. And even, in the beginning, there was the concern about surfaces and there was this and that.
Sure.
But we've always kind of known that if you were outside, the risk was way lower, right? Even at the beginning, we knew that.
Totally.
And again, even if you shut down everything for a couple of weeks, there just came a point where this didn't make sense anymore. And part of the disastrous impact, because we all know how this goes from free market economics, right? There's unintended consequences to government actions, right?
Oh, yeah.
So this was a classic example of that. We began getting calls from people who were going to be homeless because before the shutdown, they had sold their home. They had to, turn it over to whoever. Their new home was being built, and there was a tight schedule.
Oh, man, yeah.
But their new home could no longer be built because it was illegal to build their home. And so, and the builders and all the rest of them, of course, so they're obeying the governor's order. So the one that I'll never forget, it was a couple, in their 60s, 70s. The wife had just finished cancer treatment. So she's very medically vulnerable. I mean, the very definition of the kind of person that I believe in my heart of hearts that our governor was trying to protect from COVID.
Yeah.
Was at extreme risk because she was going to be literally homeless. And who knows where she would have had to try and live. Well, that's, when you talk about we're for people, yes, we are. And that for me was a classic example of whatever the intentions were. It's not about that. Those were some classic unintended consequences. You're taking this unilateral action and vulnerable people are going to be homeless. We had to fix that, and we did.
I love that. A great story, and it really brings it down to that human level where it's easy to talk about these COVID restrictions, we all live through them, but hearing about things like that makes you think about, as you said, the unintended consequences and how bad they can be. I want to ask about this limiting of governors' powers, because there's obviously been a lot of fights that Commonwealth's had to have over the years, Charles. How have you and your team built such a strong force for change in Pennsylvania, despite some opposition from different political groups or groups within society? Because you've got all these, pension reform through, as we've discussed before, limiting the governor's powers. How have you built that type of, momentum?
Sure. I think there's really 2 things that are at the heart of it, Vale. And really both of them, I think, are at the heart of Atlas Network, which is why I enjoy our time together. The first is vision. Our movement loses when our vision is fundamentally negative. We're against that, whatever that is. We're not for that. We at Commonwealth, we cast a vision that is positive about the future that we want to live in. It's a future full of human flourishing. It's a future where every child can choose the school, or parents can choose the school that they want to go to, where they're going to be able to discover their calling, and on and on. We want to be a place where entrepreneurs can employ people, and where you can, in a responsible way, create jobs, start a business, and again, flourish, all that kind of stuff, right? So I think that's a big part of it, and that's where some of us, if we're honest, I think got into this ideas business because there were things going on in the world that we thought were unjust. Very real. Sure. I just rattled off a whole bunch of things that I think are unjust. But that's not sufficient. We have to cast a big vision of how we want the world to be full of human flourishing. And so that's part one. And then part 2, I would say, is relationships. The reality is, for example, the story that I told a few minutes ago about the couple threatened with homelessness. Well, you don't find that stuff out in a white paper.
True.
You don't find that stuff out. The last place you'll find that stuff out is in the Capitol. Now, we do have people in the Capitol all the time, and that's great, but you have to know what is going on in people's lives, and that comes through relationships. I fundamentally believe in the ideas that our movement stands for. You know, I've got Milton Friedman and everybody on my shelf. Yeah. And like, I think my credentials in that respect, I would hope, are like impeccable. But I think that's only part of it. We have to know people in order to be able to say how the ideas of Friedman or a Sowell or whoever are going to transform their lives. It was because we knew of that situation of homelessness that we could, first of all, know what needed to be done. And secondly, I believe, make the case in such a way that someone who's never read Friedman and doesn't even know who he is could say, I get that. Yeah. And I'm going to vote for that ballot question, or I'm going to call my lawmaker and tell him this is crazy and we got to stop this. And those relationships are important. We are a fundamentally relational organization also in our relation to politicians, to lawmakers. And sometimes, you know, it's easy to, everybody can make a joke about politicians or whatever. At the end of the day, they make the laws. Yep. So we make it our business to know them, and as much as we can to know them in both parties and across the board, across the state, and have credibility with them, where they will listen to our ideas and, in fact, solicit our ideas. And then, of course, you know, we can't do any of that if we don't have money. So we build relationships, strong, enduring relationships with supporters. People always ask me, so why do people give to something like Commonwealth Foundation or Atlas Network or whatever? And it's amazing, you know, you do a lot of philanthropy as yourself, Vale. So you know, I'm sure, what I'm about to say, which is, you know, the stereotype, right, is like, I always think of when I was a kid in school. I don't know how it was in Australia, but in America, we would get told at school, you got to go sell these magazines to fund the school, which, by the way, like, there's property taxes to fund the school. So this is kind of stupid, right? But they would send us out with our magazines. Yeah. And you never wanted to do it because nobody really wanted the magazines, right? It was just, it was charity, right? Like, yeah, kid, I'll give you money for your magazines because I just really wanted you to get out of my house. And it was miserable, right? Yeah. But that's not how this network, that's not how this movement is built. It's not, you know, we'll give money to Vale or to Charles or whatever to get him out of our living room. It's instead, we are not just sharing our ideas, but we are bringing about results that make the world a better place. And we're not just doing it once. It's not a transaction. It's not just, you know, a political campaign or something like that. It's an enduring approach to social change. Absolutely. That's exciting to people. And that's a really cool thing to be a part of. So I would say those relationships too are part of how we've been able to do this. And I would say to, you know, anybody who's watching who supports Atlas or who supports Commonwealth Foundation, thank you, because we could not have gotten the word out about this opportunity to expand human liberty, to limit the power of government, without that philanthropic support.
Yeah, well said, Charles. I couldn't put it better myself. I think it's great to hear your take on how this momentum is in a lot of ways self-perpetuating, when it's optimistic, when it builds a compelling vision, when you bring people along, whoever they are, with the journey of what these ideas mean in practice and change lives. One area which I think really demonstrates that is education and the work that you and Commonwealth are doing in the space of educational freedom. It's an issue that really, you know, is hot button right now, especially with the last 2 years of COVID and homeschooling and school closures. And I know that Atlas Network is very excited to be partnering with Commonwealth on the work you're doing right now. But that's involved a lot of time on the ground, a lot of listening to the community. So would you mind filling me in a bit on what's going on with Commonwealth and education reform?
Sure. I have to begin with a story. I had such a great surprise last week. We learn what is needed in education from students and from teachers and from schools that are doing great jobs in transforming people's lives. And I ended up walking through one of the schools that we worked most closely with. It's Logos Academy in York, Pennsylvania, a couple of days ago. And I knew, you know, I had a meeting, I had some stuff to do, and I just wasn't really thinking about it. And what I forgot was that they were building a new high school because they have 200 people on their waiting list. Wow. To get into the school. Now, most of our viewers, I'm sure, don't know York, Pennsylvania, but the way to understand it is there's about 500 school districts in Pennsylvania, and this little city, which, by the way, it's the city that our governor is from, is certainly in the bottom 5. You know, depending on the year, it's lowest or second lowest or whatever. So horrible circumstances that these young people are having to deal with. And there's this wonderful school that's a beacon of hope, so much so that hundreds of people want to get in and there just isn't room. That's an amazing scenario. And to have the pleasure and the privilege the other day to just find myself, I didn't know it was done, walking through the new high school. It was just, to me, such a picture of hope. Because that's what that means is in the near future, there's going to be more people who have that opportunity. That's what we're about. And that's the kind of Pennsylvania that I want to live in, where I'm regularly walking through new schools that are transforming people's lives and that people have the ability to go to. And they're not going to have that ability, not everybody, without public policy change. And just to give you a little bit of background, one of the reasons the school that I walked through is able to cater to a very low-income inner-city community is that Pennsylvania was the first state in America to do what we call tax credit scholarship program. So a business owner can say, hey, instead of paying my business taxes, I'm going to put money into scholarships for kids, and I get a credit. And it's all legal, you know.
Sure.
We were the first state to do it. Well, our governor, the guy we've been talking about, he can't do this with one person rule, but he tried to convince the legislature to go along basically with getting rid of the program. He was on record when he was running saying he thought the program was suspect. And so if he had his druthers, thankfully we don't have one man rule, but if he had his druthers, the program would have gone to zero. Wow. Instead, through advocating for those kids, the kids that I saw at that school and their colleagues all across the state, since he became governor, we've tripled the program.
That's huge.
There's nothing. I love what we began the program with. I'm really thankful for the opportunity to talk about it. But if you were to ask me, of all the hours that I've dedicated to this work, there's nothing I'm prouder of than tripling the opportunity for kids to go to a great school in Pennsylvania. But we're not done. And what we're doing now is working with lawmakers on a whole suite of proposals that would radically expand what we can do. For example, that program that we've tripled, it should be doubled again because there's still a waiting list. There are kids who are applying for scholarships more than ever because of COVID. Scholarship applications have skyrocketed because people want to go to a different school. They're getting turned down. Also, there are hundreds of millions of dollars from businesses who are saying, I want to contribute. I want to give money to scholarships. But there's an arbitrary limit that our state government sets on the program. And so they're getting turned away. This is crazy.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity to fix that. We're seeing lawmakers step up in ways they never have before. Not to say, let's not get rid of it. Right? I mean, that's step one, right? Let's not get rid of it. Sure. All right. Or let's expand it a little bit, right? But we're actually seeing people say, well, you know what? No, we should double it like this year, not like 5 years from now, because there's that sense of something is wrong. And especially and of course, at the Commonwealth Foundation, we know how to find the numbers, right? When you actually look at the numbers of oh my gosh, the scholarships applications are at all-time high and there's hundreds of $1 millions just sitting on the sidelines. So we're seeing momentum for that. But that's cool, really cool. But we're shooting even higher. We're working with lawmakers who want to really change the way education works in Pennsylvania and to have the money follow the child. Yeah. Fundamentally, that's what we're for. This program we've talked about is just a way to get there. Ultimately, you should be able to say, I don't care where you live, I don't care who you are, I want my kid to go to that school. And the money that you pay into our system as taxes should follow your child. That's what we want. So we've got legislation introduced in both chambers that would do that for huge numbers of children. One of the bills even says every child. Doesn't matter who you are, everywhere. And that's our vision. That's ultimately where we want to get to. Now, I am a free market person. I'm also a practical person. I'm a pragmatic person. So I think it's great that we've got a plethora of approaches.
Absolutely.
Some being the philosophical ideal, some not. And I'm especially delighted that some of the measures that our team has worked with lawmakers to introduce are attracting bipartisan support. Because if you look at this issue nationally over the last several years, it really used to be much more bipartisan than it is today. These days, charter school is a dirty word in the Democratic Party. It just is. But when President Obama was president, which wasn't that long ago, he supported charter schools. Or look at last go around. Obviously, we ended up with President Biden, but Senator Booker from New Jersey, Senator Warren from Massachusetts. I mean, Senator Warren in her book said she was for school vouchers, which is the same thing I'm talking about. The money follows the child.
Yep.
Something has changed since then.
Yeah, sea change somewhere there.
Senator Booker, right? He's run the opposite way. So nationally, we're seeing this dynamic where people who even used to be supporters of educational opportunity are going the opposite direction. In Pennsylvania, opposite of the national trend. We are increasingly seeing Democratic lawmakers say, I want to put my name on that bill because I've walked through a school in my community, just like I did the other day, and I'm seeing the way it's transforming people's lives. And I don't care about the politics because that's not what this is about. What this is about is every child should have the opportunity to flourish. And I'm really excited about that, especially as Pennsylvania approaches a transition, an inflection point of its own, because we have limits on people's authority and their term in office. Our governor is term limited. So we're definitely going to have a new governor whenever the next time you and I get to spin a yarn together is. We don't yet know who it's going to be, but that creates an opportunity to do what we do, which is to cast a vision and say, this is really how we think the world should look, and to get people on board with it. And that makes me all the more excited that we're seeing unprecedented support for this idea that every child should have the opportunity to flourish and that the money should follow the child to whatever that child and their parent think is best.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it speaks volumes to the relational work of the Commonwealth Foundation that you're able to be building this bipartisan support, because a good idea should be a good idea. And when it comes to serving the children of Pennsylvania, well, clearly the status quo in a lot of ways isn't working, and there are solutions. It's not that we have to go and invent the wheel per se. There's things out there we can do. And I really like the point you made early in walking me through about this kind of vital synonymous relationship between education and hope, because these kids and their families are really, you know, the downstream effects of policy are so obvious immediately, whether it's names on the lists, whether it's the quality of the education, whether that be good or bad, like you can see it viscerally firsthand. So I love hearing about the successes that have happened, but frankly, Charles, I'm even more excited about the successes to come, because it sounds like there's a strong platform of change in the direction that we want to see, yet there is prime conditions for really good transformational things to come. And that's awesome.
It's exciting. And it goes without saying, it's hard, right? There aren't any guarantees. There aren't any guarantees in this business. And I think anybody watching knows that. Anybody who knows anything about our movement, it's hard. There's no guarantees. But the opportunity is amazing. And for me personally, this is why I'm here. I grew up in Pennsylvania. I left like a lot of young people. In fact, I came to the Washington, D.C. area where we're sitting today and had a very fulfilling career here. But I chose to go back about a decade ago because I thought we could unlock change like this. And it's taken, and this is something Atlas understands very well, it's taken a lot of institution building. In fact, it's taken building a network of free market institutions in Pennsylvania, not just Commonwealth Foundation. We can't do everything. I mean, I like us, but we can't do everything. It's taken time. It's taken capital. It's taken effort. It's taken relationship building. It's taken all those things. But for me personally, what I see and what I believe is the possibility that I believed was there when my wife and I uprooted our lives and went back to Pennsylvania. This is it. This is why we did it. And it's real and it's happening and we're getting a lot closer to it, and that's exciting. And that's the same reason why I know many of my colleagues have joined our team. You know, the fact is people have options, especially right now. People have apparently more options than they ever had before. You know, the Great Resignation, everything else. But it's a remarkable opportunity. It's very meaningful to me personally to be part of it. And I know for all of my colleagues who could all be doing something else. There's lots of ways to make money. There's lots of ways to advance a free society. But going back to where you started the conversation, Vale, I genuinely believe America is the last and best hope of freedom. I genuinely believe our friends across the world, when they say they're looking to us, and I genuinely believe that if we want that for America, then we have to do it in the biggest swing state. We have to do it in the place where the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were born. If it's going to happen anywhere, and if it's going to have a ripple effect, it has to happen where I come from. And that's why I'm so grateful that I agree with you. that there is remarkable hope on the horizon in
I love it.
Pennsylvania.
I love it. The passion's there, Charles, and that's what I like to hear, because you're right. This work, if it's not meaningful, why are we doing it? If it's not transformational, why are we here? So I love everything you have to say. And I know that education is not the only iron in the fire when it comes to the Commonwealth Foundation. So it would be remiss of me not to ask, what else have you got going on? What other policy issues? What kind of big flashing lights in Pennsylvania are you sinking your teeth into with the team?
Yeah, well, really everything is the short answer. We've written a comprehensive policy platform for our next governor, whoever that may be. We're a 501c3. We make it available to everyone and anyone. That's soup to nuts. How can we recover our economy from especially the devastation of the last 2 years? How can we revolutionize education? How can we reform regulations? How can we be always prepared as it relates to healthcare? All of it. And another key part of it, too, which I think is part of the zeitgeist right now, so to speak, is the whole issue of the teachers' unions,
yep.
right? Why is it that Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren have turned tail, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I think the wealth that those institutions have that certain people want for their presidential campaigns is a big part of it. And those people really, I mean, the Marxists say that the capitalists expropriate the wealth. It's actually them. Mm-hmm. I mean, nobody expropriates more wealth from people who don't want to give it to them than teachers' unions. Well, that's part of our vision for reforming Pennsylvania as well. Is it just shouldn't be that if you don't want to pay into that political agenda, you have to pay into it. Mm-hmm. And the fact that so many people have to feeds all these problems that we're dealing with. So that's a key part of our vision for the future as well. And I believe there's never been a time to make that case as well, because over the last couple of years, I think people have seen that teachers are great. Teachers do really important work. But these political organizations that they're drafted into have really done awful things for kids. Mm-hmm. And people have had it, right?
Exactly.
Which, again, creates an opportunity for policy to reflect what voters want. We started our discussion with the reforms on executive power in Pennsylvania, the constitutional amendment that passed last year. That was the laws and the policy reflecting the will of the people.
Yes.
I believe that on all these issues, including the issue of what kind of power should be granted to a political special interest group that has done really hurtful things over the last couple of years, I believe we're going to see the policies of the government better reflecting the will of the people. And that's called the consent of the governed. And it's a really beautiful thing.
Amen. I love it. I love it. Well, there is obviously a lot that we need to stay in touch with you about in terms of what Commonwealth Foundation is achieving and doing and fighting for. So how can our viewers and our listeners, Charles, stay across your work and that of Commonwealth Foundation?
Thank you. Well, yeah, the best place to go is commonwealthfoundation.org. We send out regular updates, and they go to people all over the world, and we would love to have more fans of Atlas Network receive the information, receive the hope, and be part of the change.
Amen. Well, I got to tell you, Charles, I love having a chat with you because it's exciting to hear what you're doing. And I think the thing that really strikes me and has always struck me about your team at Commonwealth is that you're doers. I mean, you got the white papers, you got the data modeling, but you're out there in the State House making sure you're educating legislators. You're out there talking to people on the street. You're in the community seeing the schools firsthand. You're walking the walk. And that's something that we can all really take a page out of as people in the freedom movement. And I love what you're doing. So thank you so much for coming on Borderless, mate.
It's my total pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.